everybody, and welcome to Platform 9 in Hove, where I'm delighted to see some lovely faces of reinventors. I'm sure you're all ready to reinvent in one way or the other. And to welcome people online. I hope there's people there. I'm going to wave as if there's millions there. So we're doing a live podcast. We have a podcast called The Reinventors. We've had 8 episodes already. And in that podcast, we tell stories about, or people tell me stories about their reinvention. And we've had everything from Lou in Lululand, who reinvented herself as an influencer of 100,000 followers. We've got a fit and midlife guy who was on the front cover of Men's Health after giving up drinking and starting to get fit. And there's loads and loads of brilliant stories. So do have a look at the podcast and find some more inspiration. But tonight, I'll just tell you a little bit about me, our business, about my own reinvention. Then I'll introduce our lovely panel. And we're going to have some questions that will prompt them to tell their story. And then hopefully we'll get you involved as well and hear about you. So Live to Reinvent is a business that I started with my sister Claire less than a year ago. So we're very new. It's all kind of non-stop at the moment. And we sort of came up with the idea after lots of conversations. But what we're trying to do and what we are doing with our clients is really encouraging people to put life into the years you've got, not just add years onto your life. So we're about health span and looking at the health span. Most people will live to 80, if we're lucky. That's the kind of average. But a lot of people kind of die at 60 effectively because their health span comes to an end. So for a lot of people at 60, that's when you start having drugs and going to hospital and, getting bad backs and whatever. Your health span ends, but it doesn't have to. And we're determined to make sure that we help people to make a change there and make sure that isn't how you live the last however many years you have. So that's what we're about. And we work with individuals and businesses. And we really, we've got lots of ways of working, but this is all part of it. The Reinventors podcast, the gatherings we hope will get bigger and bigger is all about that. And I, of course, have my own reinvention story, so a number of reinventions. In fact, I think my whole life has been one big reinvention around the themes of journalism, fitness, and hotelleryism, if there is such a word. I've always done those 3 things in different variations, so I've either been writing about fitness or doing fitness and coaching. And then the hotel bit has been in between that. I used to run a Airbnb in Eastbourne called the Running Inn, but that was many moons ago. And I continue to reinvent. But mid-50s, a couple of years ago, I kind of had hit a bit of a wall. So physically very fit, lots of energy, but mentally I just thought, I'm just done. And my ability to sort of see a vision and think, right, what am I going to do next, and have ideas, it seemed to have just disappeared. And I thought, what the hell, what's happened to me? Who am I? And it really made me question my own identity. At work, I was feeling that there was a lot of ageism in the environment I was in. And I just thought, these aren't my people anymore. I don't know who they are or where they are. And so talking to Claire was approaching, or probably had hit 60 at that stage. Sorry, Claire, you had already hit 60. We started to talk about that and the health span and saying, God, 20 last summers. What are we going to do at 20 last summers? Are we going to enjoy those 20 last summers? And I started to think, okay, the people I've been with, I know it's quite scary. Hopefully we'll all live to 100, so it'll be 40 or 50 or whatever. But the people I've been hanging around with or working with they weren't my people. So I thought I've got to find and create a new world for my 20 last summers. So in between, I did a bit of, before this, I'd done a bit of off to the Camino. I did the Camino, went to Kenya by myself and went up to the mountains in Kenya. Empty nest as well. My son got married. So it's a bit of a big change, but it was a gradual thing, really. And so that's how this started. From that, all of those things going on, probably menopause as well. I might as well chuck that in. It goes into everything. It was that, children leaving, work kind of reaching a bit of a dead end with work, and then this has emerged. And here we are now tonight with 3 brilliant people, and I'm going to tell you about them. Stop talking about me, and I want to hear about all of you as well. So I'm going to introduce each of you. So actually, we're going to do a grand entrance on. So I'm looking at Helen first. So Helen, if you come up, and I'll just tell everybody, I don't know if it's the right way to do it TV-wise, but tell everyone about Helen. So Helen is an author of 3 books, and Helen has had 5 reinventions, she tells me. She's gone from party girl to very elite sportswoman, I would say now. And she's got a load of great stories about how to reinvent and the sort of fun element of it as well, I think. And we've got Hildy. Hildy's our head teacher turned lifeguard with a channel swim thrown in. So from quite a stressful head teacher role to doing what she absolutely loves. And it's a process that she'll tell you all about it. And finally, Fiona, last but not least, is Fiona, who was in corporate fashion and PR and, lots of, not PR. I knew when I said that you weren't in PR, but, no, it's your own PR. And now she's the founder of Energy Wave in Brighton, which is an amazing place where you can go and reset. And I'll let her tell you about it because it's quite hard to explain, but it's really lovely. So I'm going to go on to the first question, and then it will be over to the panel to tell their story through the prompt of the question. So thank you, Cameron. So the first question is, what was the trigger for your change, and what was the moment things shifted for you? So I'm looking at Helen, and you've had 5 reinventions. There might be a few moments.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Is this on? Yeah, I did think it was off. Oh, right. There's a button. I've just pressed a button. Okay, great. So yeah, I've had 5 career inventions. I actually counted them today in preparation for this. So to give a bit of context, it's a little bit difficult to know which one do I talk about. What I will say though is that, to answer your question, the common denominator in all my career inventions has been a sense of either something isn't right with my life or something isn't right with my values. So there's always been a sense of discontent, and I think that's always been the trigger. So to give you a little bit of context, I'll run through my 5 career inventions, and then so then you know where I'm coming from. So initially, I started off as a tax accountant. Like, really, what was I thinking? Studied Japanese at university, and it was one of those big 5 accountancy firms, and they had a Japanese division, so they needed Japanese speakers. That was the only reason I went into it. Really wasn't cut out for the corporate world. It lasted 2 years, and I resigned by poem. But that is another podcast. Okay, then I always wanted to write, so then I went back to journalism college and I studied journalism, and I ended up in broadcast journalism, ended up in radio, and then I went into TV. So I was producing TV news for ITN. Very good job on paper, but then one day I woke up, I thought, but I'm not right. The whole reason I did journalism was because I wanted to write. Like, what happened? So then I decided to leave that job and then become a written journalist, which didn't happen overnight, but I went freelance, just another reinvention, and then was pitching my own stories from the outside. So there ensued a 10-year journalism career, during which I wrote 3 books, one of which was a dating memoir. So here comes the other reinvention, because in my private life, I was just exploring my newfound sexuality in my 20s. As a writer, you always write about what is most exciting to you at the time. Really sad I wasn't saving refugees, but no, I was dating. So I wrote a dating memoir. Anyway, I ended up writing about sex, and I did a little bit of investigative stuff. But it was mostly, I had a dating column, and I just began, and it was all very fun, and all my friends would say, Helen's a sex journalist. And which was great for that period of my life when I lived in London, party life. But over the years, I became more wholesome. I started to see that there was more to life than drinking in bars. So I got into endurance sport. Again, it was a slow progression, joined a running club. And I think I just felt that I didn't want that identity anymore. I was kind of this commentator that talked about non-monogamy. And, as a media figure, you're often encouraged to take the polarized view. And I was often wheeled out on places like ITV This Morning to kind of talk about if ever a celebrity had an affair and that kind of thing. And I felt like I was becoming a caricature of myself. And then when I joined this running club, and then I was with these wholesome people, and I just felt there's this sense of, okay, this persona as a sex journalist is all very well in like the Groucho Club, but it's not very good in the local pub with your running club when they're all talking about, what trail shoes they have or whatever. So
I'm not sure about that, Helen.
But yeah, so I needed to reinvent again, and so I started to write about endurance sport and etc. And also I wanted to sort of take that, sort of leave the writing and the public persona behind. And then, so I left journalism completely and ran a PR agency. And then there was a little bit of continuity because PR and journalism are not too dissimilar. And then I did that for 5 years, and I was going to grow it. And, I did grow it. Had 5 employees. The dream was, I'm going to sell this company. I'm going to retire at 50. But the truth was, it was very, very stressful. And I had to make a decision 5 years in that this is getting the better of me. I'd lost, my life was consumed by the business. And again, another reinvention was needed. And it was a very difficult decision, but I scaled the business down and I went back to writing. But I am now a writing coach. I'm not writing for my own bylines. I am helping other people, and I really feel like I've come full circle, finding my purpose, which is using all those things in my career to put to greater good, which I feel is like helping people develop their stories, and that's what I do now. I coach people to develop non-fiction books. I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. Just one thing is just about the moment things shifted. And I know it's not one moment, but it sounds to me like for you, purpose has been a driving force when you've made those changes. That you've
purpose and identity. I think that's the common thread in all of these things. It is, am I living the life that I want to be seeing? Because certainly the trigger for me for wanting to go from this seemingly successful career of going on TV and commentating on, every time there was sort of a relationship story in the news, and writing a dating column and having a dating memoir, which was very successful. It seemingly, but the disconnect for me was, I don't want to be that person anymore. I actually wanted to blend into the background. So I think it's identity was the trigger, and that is for a lot of people, I think, that change careers or want it's that their sense of self, no matter how successful you are, if it doesn't align with who you feel you are, then that's when you need to reinvent.
Well, it's brilliant, very inspiring and very brave, actually, because not everyone's as brave. But, well done. 5 reinventions. I think a round of applause for the 5 reinventions. And now we'll just hear from Hildy as well, the same question. So what was the trigger for change, Hildy, and the moment for you when things shifted?
Well, I don't have 5 reinventions. I have kind of one and a mini one. So I started off my kind of working life. After university, I wanted to be an academic and I wanted to be an anthropologist. And I did my PhD in anthropology. I met my husband when we were both students. And he came to Sussex to work as a lecturer at Sussex University in the anthropology department. And I realised I was kind of assumed to be like free labour, like an extra add-on. Like I kept getting asked to tutor courses and, fill in some of the teaching. And I was never getting a permanent role. And I was like, do you know what? I don't really like this. I'm not really happy about being the kind of like unofficial +1 to do the kind of cheap stuff. And I had a look at what I liked, and what I liked was teaching. That was what I liked better than the research. So I thought, well, why not become a teacher? My family are all teachers, come from a long line of teachers. And so I went into teaching because I did love it. I do love it. And I'm actually teaching lots more now. And I unfortunately was a victim of my own success. I kind of became good at teaching, got asked to do more management then because I was good at teaching, ironically, and ended up being a head teacher. And a little bit different to you, actually. I think for me, I was following my purpose and I was following my heart, and I I adored it. I loved it. And during COVID, for example, it was hard. It was really hard leading a school through COVID, but I actually felt really privileged to be able to do that. So I was kind of busily being a head teacher. More and more problems were happening in schools in terms of funding falling. We had more and more complex families coming to our schools. And I wanted to meet the needs of everybody that was there. And it was becoming really difficult. And it was becoming very difficult to look my teachers in the eye at the end of the day when they came to me and said, we cannot meet the needs we have in our classes. And they'd be crying and I'd be saying, I don't have anything else to give you. And I was giving everything I could. You know, I was working like 14, 15, 16-hour days in school. During COVID, I lived in a shed in the garden so that I would be away from my family. And I kind of, before that, I kind of was really, I was aware of the stress that I was under. I'd read The Body Keeps Score, and I'd reflected on that in the context of my mum having been a head teacher and dying a very early death from abdominal cancer. So she was the age I am now when she was diagnosed with that. So I had that kind of rumbling in the background, whilst also kind of on the surface thriving on the stress and enjoying being able to help people. Anyway, after we went back to our full-time education after COVID, this was my kind of real trigger moment. I went to work with COVID. I was really unwell. We had so many staff off. And a school can't open and operate unless it has a designated safeguarding lead there. I was one of the designated safeguarding leads, and all my others were ill with COVID. And I thought, I can go in to be in the building, I can shut my office door and be away, not infecting anybody, so I will go into school. So I was in school, I was like fever, I had a headache, I felt so unwell, and I had an ongoing issue with a family that I was trying to help, and it wasn't going well. And the mother of this child came in and demanded to see me and came into my room. And she came and we were trying to kind of problem solve the situation. And she came and she basically yelled in my face, "You don't even effing care." And I went home that night. I slept really badly because I was really ill. And the next day I handed my notice in. And it wasn't her. What it was that made me realize I had been giving everything in me to other people, and nobody even knew that. And I'd been neglecting my family and my health, and I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've spoke to you before, Hildy, about this, and I know that one of the things you did say was about the recognition of your own mortality, with your mother's, reaching your mother's age, and knowing what had happened to her, and also what you're describing sounds like a kind of classic burnout, really, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that in different ways, and it's great that you recognised it and made the change. And we're going to hear about your change in a minute because it's a pretty amazing change. But Fiona, over to you.
Okay, hi. So I think I'll go a bit further back with my, not too long, so basically when I was 25, my sister had done this weekend course, and she'd phoned up and she'd cleaned up all these relationships with mom and dad. There'd been quite fallouts and upsets. And I was like, oh, that's different. She said, you should do it. I went, yeah, I will. And she went, well, there's one this weekend. And I'm like, I think I'm busy this weekend. And she went, look, Fiona, you are stuck in a rut. You're boring. You need to get out and do something. Only a way a sister can. She was absolutely right. And I did this, as the Landmark Forum, some of you may know it, may have done it, you may have been harassed by people to do it. But I did it, and it blew my mind. I took on my life. I cleaned up everything that didn't work in my life. And I was, it was just the starting block for, I really saw I can create my life however I want it to. Like, I get to say, if I have a foundation of integrity in my life, I can create whatever I want. And I worked there for a while. I loved it. I led seminars, I led courses, and then I left to have my babies, and I was home educating my babies. That was something else we'd created. And one day I was a bit like, I'm a bit bored. Like, I love my kids, but, home education is fun. And I was like, I decided what I was going to create was I was going to work one day a week for someone fabulous. I thought, I just need a bit of fabulous in my life. This is, there's too many muddy boots and, clogs and crocs and all of that. Anyway, so I ended up, there was a position available for somebody my sister knew, who this fabulous woman who used to be a jewellery designer, and she was starting designing jewellery again and designing clothes. And I went and I worked with her. And we had such a good time. I would go to LA and stay in the Beverly Hills Hotel and go to San Francisco and go out to those amazing houses for dinner, and we'd go do shows in billionaires' houses in the Upper East Side in New York. I was just literally having a ball. I was working more than one day a week by then. But it was, it was all manageable. My husband and I had really created that he would work part-time, I would work, we'd do all of that. And then, of course, COVID hit. And with COVID, the travel to the States wasn't really happening anymore. We ended up hiring somebody in America to do shows over there, so I couldn't go and do shows anymore. I was doing a lot of barcodes and, things like that. And I did another course. My friend leads Dr. Joe Dispenza courses. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Dispenza. He did a weekend course with that. And I was like, I've been having fun. I've been really enjoyed that. I've been working really hard, giving a lot to, really giving all to the job, always available, always on my email, always just doing all that stuff. And I did this meditation weekend, and I was like, you know what? I think it's time to create something new now. I think it's time that I'm not very good at letting go of stuff like that. Like, I'm so indispensable and blah blah blah. And I thought, I'm going to create that it's all going to work out. That the woman I work for, she had other stuff as well, but I had a particular job that would have been quite difficult to hand over in a short period of time. So I was like, I am just going to create that it's all going to work out. Something new is going to come, and I'm going to hand over this job with ease. And I don't know if I stop there.
Well, no, that's brilliant, because we have got another three questions. But is this microphone working? It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just to say, so from there, I don't know what you all picked up, but I think identity crises, deal with that, go through it, work through it. A burnout, a trigger, like you're faced with mortality, when enough's enough. I think with Hilda, you got to that point, enough was enough, didn't you? And with Fiona, just that brilliant positive thing of you can create what you can create your life. And it's just a really good thing for when you think about reinvention. Those are typical kind of things. Fiona's probably the most that proactively positive, that you kind of then you're in that position now where you're creating a life for yourself still, aren't you? So brilliant.
Yes.
So we'll go on to the next question. And the next question is, what was the first action? Well, you've all kind of covered that, so we don't have to. But if there was a point like, if it was me, it might be when I put my running shoes on the first time was the first action, when I reinvented myself as a runner. And I kind of do actually remember doing my first hour run and saying to a newsagent who wasn't remotely interested, I've just run for an hour. And he said, oh, well done. But for me, I remember that because I've now done 20 marathons. And I went from 20 cigarettes a day to running 20 marathons. So have you got a moment when you think, I've made the change? Helen, of any of your five?
Yeah. I'll try not to give you an answer for each of the five. But I think this is a really important point, because there is never going to be an overnight transition. And I think this signifies the biggest hurdle of going through a reinvention or transformation, if you want to call it that. Precisely because usually we are in a position, whether it's a job, a relationship, a town that we're thinking of moving out of, we're already established in whatever that situation is. So to reinvent, you have to leave that behind. And so those first steps are really crucial. And this is what I struggle. I mean, given that I've changed my career, I've always struggled with the rebranding of it, okay? And also there's the practical question, how are you going to continue making money if you're like jumping careers? So I'll give you the example of my most recent transformation, which was scaling down my PR business to do what I do now, which is writing, coaching and ghostwriting and book editing. So how on earth did I get those first clients, right? And that's a difficult thing. And I think what it is you've got to test the water and tell people in your network. So what happened for me was, I started just like telling people this is what I'm thinking of doing, and it just happened to be that in my business, in the PR business I was running, I had some really good long-term clients who, I had a good relationship with, who I could be honest with and say, look, I'm sort of losing interest in the business, and I really want to go to my true calling of ghostwriting and writing editing. And it happened to be that those clients had a book they were thinking of writing. So while it didn't happen overnight, what I did is I gave them a bit of free advice. I said, look, if you've got this idea for a book, let me read it. I've written 3 books already. I can give you some advice. And I gave them friendly and free advice. And sure enough, a year later, both those clients, when they were ready to write the book, they came to me and used my services. So it's things like that. It's just making those first steps is like almost believing that you can do it. So and I'll give another example of when I left journalism to start PR. How did I get my first client? How do you do that? And again, it was similar. Just spoke to people about it, and it turned out one of my friends, her mum had a business and she needed some low-level, a bit of social media, a bit of PR. It wasn't a formal contract. I just did a bit so that then that was my first casual work, but then I can put that on my CV. I can then go, that's the stepping stone for the next thing. Or you do things for friends as a favor and they'll give you a testimonial. It's that kind of thing, And if you put it in the context of even moving house, it's just like maybe go and stay in that town for a week. Just make that first small step.
Did you sort of fake it till you make it at all? Was there any of that?
I think you have to a little bit with Reinvent, but while being authentic as well. I would never say that I can do something when I don't. But that's really interesting because we do live in a world now that is just self-promo heavy, and it's so competitive to promote yourself, so you have to shout about your abilities, even if you're feeling imposter syndrome and you're feeling like you're just starting out. So that's a tough one, I think, and that's why you can't expect in any reinvention to suddenly be at the top. And what I'd say is never compare yourself to other people in the industry who've been doing it for years. So when I switched from PR to ghostwriting, suddenly I was looking online at the competitors who do what I wanted to do, and I was like, oh my God, they've got like 200 books that they've edited, and okay, I've written 3 books, but like that's not a lot compared to a lot of people out there. But you have to not get deterred by that, because there will be a uniqueness
and you're right, in this
approach.
world, like if you are thinking of a reinvention, you've got a vision, and then you look around at other people. Well, one, comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. It's very true. And 2, if you're looking at what everyone else is doing, you're distracting from what you should be calling from inside out, and looking at yourself and what you can do and what you can offer to the world. And we're living a long time, and there's many components of us. So reinvention is an opportunity to just keep showing different bits of yourself, if you like, and show who you are in different ways and manifest yourself in different ways, I think.
And discover those strengths as well.
Yeah.
In the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Hildy. The question.
Okay,
what was your first action?
So my first action, after having felt kind of trapped, like I was irreplaceable for a long time, which is why I didn't ever hand my notice in before, was I handed my notice in and told everybody. And it kind of looks like I just left with no plan and no idea of how I was going to pay the mortgage or how I was going to look after my children or anything like that. However, I had burning in me a passion for swimming that had been there for a really long time, and I've always loved swimming. I've come in and out of it, but I had found my happy place in swimming and in endurance swimming. So I had already signed up to swim the Channel, and after talking to a friend of mine that was a consultant, and I said, like, I've got this really stressful job. do you think I can swim the channel while doing it? And she said, yeah, you can. Like, you can. It's possible. It's difficult. But yeah, you can. So I'd signed up for it. So I had that. So I had that as my kind of thing to do every day, and that kept me going. So I handed my notice in. I was gone. The last 3 months when I was working my notice were horrible. I cried every single day. Like, was this the right thing? I already missed my children. I still miss my children. I still cry about not being a head teacher at that school. So I had that to throw myself into, and I'd already, because my children were swimmers and I had had a connection with swimming my whole adult life, my whole life since I was 3, I had already got myself my swimming teaching and coaching qualifications and my open water qualifications, because I knew that when I left schools, I wanted to do that. And in my mind, I was going to retire and I was just going to be an old lady doing it, you know. And all that happened was I became a slightly younger old lady doing it. And I had to start at the bottom. You know, I started right at the bottom doing like minimum wage and with 18-year-olds that were more experienced than me and were telling me, no, you don't do it like that. You know, like what? Like, you know, I was like, yeah, I learned 20 years ago when I was at Brighton Swimming Club. And I had to swallow my ego. And, you know, in swimming teaching and lifeguarding, there's a lot of scrubbing toilets and squeegeeing floors. And I didn't mind. I actually, after so much time of carrying everybody else's load, it was really nice to just squeegee the floor and scrub the toilets. I cannot tell you how lovely that is. And sitting on the lifeguard chair, being present in the moment, instead of being on playground duty, thinking about the assembly that you haven't planned and the teacher meeting that you've got to run and the parent complaint that you've got to deal with and the kid that you know is going to be waiting for you when you go in. That's really nice too. So I just kind of fast-tracked the stuff that I had already been doing. But for me, those things were there already because I was passionate about them and I loved them. And when you said about like literally the lacing up of your trainers and going out of the door, it was almost like that. Like that is a passion that's there and has always been there. And somehow there's a kind of aligning of the stars at this point where you say, enough of that, I'm going to go with this thing that's in my heart. And now I have so much work that I cannot, you know, it's not all well paid. Some of it's well paid, some of it's not. I'm now training lifeguards. I'm assessing some lifeguards on a qualification tomorrow. I never thought I'd be doing that. And I'm back to something that I did briefly in my teaching career, which is teaching adults. And I'm loving it. I just, teaching my first lifeguard course was amazing.
And you have swum the channel and recently done 30, what was it?
So 30k in the pool. So I swam the equivalent distance of the English Channel on Sunday, just because someone asked me to. And I was like, 12 hours. And I did get out to wee.
She's a good swimmer. and she does it in just your cousin in sea lays. I go for 10 minutes on like a block of ice.
It was cold. It was really cold. I got in on Sunday and it was 17 degrees, and that's colder than either of my channel swims that I've done.
Yeah,
and
Jesus.
I thought, I'm not sure I can do it. But I thought I'll do 10k and see how I feel. And after 10k, I wasn't getting any colder, so I was like, okay, just person up. You know, it's going to be uncomfortable, but get on with it. But when I swam the channel, so you said about like your USP and not comparing yourself to other people. There are other more experienced swimming teachers and swimming coaches out there, people that have been doing it full time for 20 years. I've been doing it a little bit for 20 years. I'm an experienced teacher, and I know a lot about teaching, and I know a lot about teaching adults, and I know a lot about coaching. But one of the things when I was actually swimming the channel was, I had better not cock this up because this is going to be my USP. And if I really want to make a career of it, I have to swim the channel. And that's quite motivating when you're 12 hours into a swim and you're feeling a little bit rubbish.
I mean, it's a good thing to think of, and that is your kind of almost like where it began. It's identifying that what this is all about. Because I remember we spoke before and it was the channel was the North Star, and as you said, the stars aligned, and you just kind of got in the pool, went to sea lanes, cleaned the drains, whatever you had to do. And now you've really come on since in a year doing the other coaching and stuff.
Yeah, so I've been doing swimming teaching and coaching. So I now run the Pool to Pier program at Brighton Swimming School.
Yeah.
And I've also coaching my two My first 2 channel soloists as well.
Oh,
I've done
that's
a few
brilliant.
relay swimmers, and this is like a real test, and it's going well so far. They're hitting all their milestones. I'm really proud of
Amazing.
them. So I'm
Fantastic.
more proud of them than I was when I did it.
But there it is again, a step-by-step process, like Helen was saying. So Fiona, over to you. Yeah, well done. Clap. Round of applause.
So for me, I was walking along the beach with my friends after the moment called, okay, I'm going to create something new and I have no idea what it is. And my friend said to me, we've just found this amazing system. It's an energy healing room, and we're setting one up in Denmark. And I went, oh. And then it was like I got hit by lightning or something weird. I was like, I think I'm meant to set this up in Brighton. And like, I'd not done a session, I'd not been in it. I really respect and trusted them. That was the main part. So I knew it was great. And I just thought, I think this is the thing I've got to do. So it was, you know, I had no idea what I was going to do next. And then it was literally threw my hat over the wall. It was one of those things I think what I knew was from my work with the fashion designer, I was in the back end. I wasn't designing anything. I was the one going, I don't know if we can afford this. Or, do you really need to do that fabric? And she would be like, oh, Fiona, you know, like Debbie Downer in the corner going, we can't have that zip, you know. And we were a good team. So it basically was a case of, I know how to run a business. I know how to do social media. Not well, but I know how to post something on social media. I know how to do a newsletter. I know how to set up a website. I know how to set up financial payment systems. I can do this. That's all you need. Yeah, it's like I know the basics, and it's like, and I can learn you know, and I knew I could take care of people. That was the other thing, and the room, you know, it was very much about taking care of people. So I knew that, okay, I've got the components to do this. I can afford it, and I can be responsible for it. It's not like I'm risking the house or anything like that to do it.
But what you're doing is quite, I don't think this, oh it is. I don't think what you're doing is quite sort of left field, isn't it? So to be struck by lightning on the beach about that, I'm like, wow.
Well, it was just like, I think I'm meant to do this. I think this is what I'm meant to do. I don't know whether it was just a moment of madness or what it was, but it kind of worked out.
Tell, because it's quite hard to explain.
It's now a good time.
Maybe it's
so
good to hear.
It is machines and screens that are set up in the room, and this light. The funny thing is, I'm terrible at explaining what it is. That is the most amusing. That's why when you said it was PR, I was like, it's definitely not PR. And all I know is when I go in that room. It's a 2-hour session. You sit in a comfortable chair. There's no contact. You just sit in a chair, and the energy in the room helps you get to that deep level of meditation. And it's in that deep level of meditation, in that deep state, is where your body can heal and repair. And so it's getting out of that busy, busy way we live our lives, running around. We never take 5 minutes for ourselves. There's always something else to do. There's always something else in the list. But when you go into this room, people are like, Fiona, stop talking to me. If I go in with my friends to show them it, they'll go, can you stop talking now? I just need to go to sleep. So it takes you to this deep, restful state.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that.
And it's called EE Systems, and my business is Energy Wave Brighton, but we've got this little room, and it's beautiful with a stained glass window, and you just go in and relax for 2 hours. And it's not like relaxing in a normal room, it's different. Yeah.
And actually, what you were saying about Joe Dispenza and doing the meditation,
Yes.
having so the process was, you know, you had your lightning on the beach, but you might not have had that if you hadn't been done the practice
open and ready to create what was next.
Yeah.
It's like, because I was looking for what was next. I
Yeah.
wasn't looking at setting up a business. I certainly wasn't looking at setting up an energy business, and I don't have anything to do with health and wellness in my past. But this was like, this ticks all my book, because I enjoyed, when I worked at Landmark, I enjoyed making a difference to people, and I enjoy organising, doing stuff. So this was a way I could do both.
Yeah, so in a way that sort of would indicate you don't need to overthink it. You just need to be in a ready state to make the change. And trust yourself, I guess, as well, to a certain
Yeah,
extent.
trust, a lot of throwing your hat over, just trusting the universe. You know, and a lot of the time now I live life from, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yeah.
As, you know, as long as keep the foundation working. You know, and I'm not a crazy person that just like, oh, it'll all work. You know, I've got the foundation there. And I'm always going to be the sensible Scottish person. So it's good for me to do something, you know, a bit woo-woo.
Yeah.
You know.
Woo-woo with some practical
Exactly, with some
steps
practical
applied.
grounding foundations. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've answered that question.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to the third question. So here we are today. You're all reinvented. What does it look like? How has your life changed? And we'll keep the order we've got.
People
Let's
will be
keep it
bored of me.
ordered. So how, when you've manifested, created that vision, if you imagine your own, you know, it's always good to sort of think for yourselves if you're visualising what might change. And here you can hear from what has changed for our panel.
Yeah, certainly life has changed and career has changed. But what I will say in terms of, you know, what reinvention looks like, I kind of think that there's a process of, first there's the discomfort, there's the knowing that, you know, there's some sort of dissatisfaction with your life. And then there comes a phase of exploring, because it's not like you're going to know what it is. It's like you said, you know, when you left your job, you had this draw for swimming, but you didn't know you were going to go on and be a lifeguard. And likewise, you didn't know you were going to set up an energy waste space in Brighton. And I didn't know when I, you know, was writing about relationships and had a dating column, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to write about next. I didn't know that I was going to go on and become an endurance athlete, but I just knew there was something that needed to change. So I think there comes in this process of exploring, but from your position of safety. So every time that I've reinvented my career or an aspect of my personal life, you explore from outside that, you know, where you are. You don't give. I've never given everything up. So it's like when I went from being a journalist to PR, it's okay, let's see what work is out there, let's see how I'm going to do this. When if you're in a relationship, you don't like, and it might be like, okay, let's just see what else is out there. So I think there's that uncomfortable place of exploring that prequels any transformation.
And then in your transformed states, have you sort of thought, I'm here now, this is where I was, or is it always kind of... You know?
I think one is always before you're fully into it, before you're fully flourishing in your new life or your new transformation or your new career or whatever it might be, you're always tempted to go back to what was before. So, for instance, when I scaled down the PR business and went into ghostwriting, it wasn't easy to get clients. It still isn't. You know, I'm 3 years into that transition, that number 5 transition, and it was really tempting to just suddenly take a PR client, because I had a business with a good Google ability, so I would get the odd email occasionally saying, you know, asking about my PR services, and I could have done it, and it was quite tempting to go back, but I had to remember that no, that life and that career was causing me stress. When I was doing, you know, PR was just getting more and more difficult in the way that the media is changing now. And I have to remember that the stresses that caused and the difficulty it was in serving clients. So you have to say no.
Yeah,
and that's one of the challenges, I think, in reinvention is it's shutting down that old life, almost like an addiction. you know, don't go back to that, but just have faith in the new path.
Yeah, and that's it. There isn't some sort of Shangri-La. When you're in the place you're heading to, you may well be fearful still at times, but you just stay steadfast.
There's been times when
it.
you know things have not gone well, and I've thought, oh, should I just apply for a job? Should I just go back and be an employee like normal people? And then the prospect of having to do a 9 to 5 then keeps me motivated to do what I want to do, so I can stay self-employed and do the things I want to do. Yeah. But there's always, when things are difficult, it's always tempting to go back to the familiar. But that familiar doesn't always make one happy.
Yeah, it's a good point. And like you said, with relationships, that's often the case as well. People will go back, or, you know, just because of fear. They don't want to. So you have to embrace it. It's not an easy thing to make a big change or to reinvent. You have to kind of go, right, just make the decision and stick with it and go with it. And it's a process, and like we said, it's not easy. And I think, Hilda, you probably had a few. Well, you kind of went with it, didn't you? You enjoyed it. It's slightly different, I think, your story.
I get what you say about the kind of needing to just kind of go, and I did just go. And there are many times I'm really aware of it. And when you posed this question, I just checked what I'd written down, because I thought, did I really write that down? I did. Like in my reinvented life, I literally smell the roses and hear the birds sing, and am present in a way that I don't remember being ever in my adult life, actually. And I had a brief flutter with my old life, and actually coming here next to Hove Town Hall reminded me of that. So when I had my notice in, and I was then doing these kind of minimum wage jobs and building up from the bottom, I was really fortunate. You know, I had a very, very supportive husband who was working, and that changed during this process because he lost his job, and so things became a little bit more challenging. And I did have that anxiety, you know, and I did have that worry of, like, you know, how we're paying the mortgage and all of that. And so I was offered a job of working on one project for Brighton and Hove in education, which was writing a set of guidance for schools around inclusive practice for children with special education needs and disabilities, which is my education passion. And I took it, and I was promised it would be 6 months of 1 day a week. It ended up being over a year of much more than that. But I'm really glad I did. I'm glad I did it because I'm really happy that guidance is out there, and I'm really proud of the piece of work that I did. But I'm also really pleased I did it because it reminded me that however much I really care about that, that is not where I am now. And I don't want to be doing that work now. I don't want to feel like the inclusion of children in schools in Brighton and Hove is my responsibility, and in any way. And so we launched that a couple of months ago, and I was very proud of it. I was really pleased to see the back of it. I mean, it did help financially, and it helped me not worry financially. But in my day-to-day, the reinvented life is that financial worry is kind of like bubbling along every so often, but it does for everybody all the time. And we had a conversation kind of before we started, didn't we, about, you know, how much you can end up feeling not just trapped in your job because you feel irreplaceable, but trapped in your life because of the things that you've done and the decisions you've made and the car you drive and, you know, the place where you live and, you know, that you need to decorate. I mean, there are rooms in my house. I've lived in my house since my daughter was born. She's 19, and we moved in a week before she was born, and there are rooms I have not decorated.
But
and I don't really care.
You're smelling the roses, and you're
I
mindful.
would much rather pinch myself about the fact that I am walking along in the light. I mean, in the winter when I worked in schools, I didn't see daylight at all, ever, on a weekday. And now, you know, like yesterday, my daughter was, this is my dream. So my daughters were both really struggling. My own children were really struggling while I was helping, trying to sort out other people's. And one of them didn't go to school for a couple of years. She didn't leave the house. She didn't leave her bed for several months at one point. And she's doing really well. But yesterday she was having a real wobble. And I was like, I don't really know what to do. Anyway, I said, come down to Sea Lanes after I finish my shift. And she's been doing some open water swimming. She loved swimming. And she's been doing some coaching for me on pool to pier, but she hasn't summoned a wetsuit. And I was like, you've got to do this. Why don't you come down after I finish work? It's a beautiful day. Got her in a wetsuit. She was just hilarious about how different it is swimming in a wetsuit, swimming in a costume. It was just broke up everything, you know? It was joyful, it was silly, it was fun. Trying to get her in the wetsuit was hilarious. And we had a brilliant time. And then we went home and watched Bridgerton and ate like bagels and drank tea. And I was like, I would never have been able to do this with my own daughter when she needed it before. And yesterday I could. And I was literally like, this is what I wanted in my life.
That's brilliant. And I think that's the thing, appreciating when you've got to where you're heading is a big part of this. You know, the reinvention, because you can end up being a serial reinventor. Just go, what can I do next? and never feeling satisfied. But that is the key thing. And Fiona, I think you probably would have done that as well.
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things for me is I was always very motivated to get stuff done. I was always very good at getting stuff done, but it was always anxiety-based. It was always like, okay, what emails have I got? Oh, God, I've got to get that done. Where do I got it? You know, it was just always like that. And running the business I have now, I don't allow myself. It's like, you can't run a great energy room when you've got this hyper-stressed woman that's trying to sort everything out. You know, just the two don't work, right? So it's like, no, it's like, and I catch myself, I'm driving to work, I'm like, oh, what have I been doing for time? And it's just like, Fiona, you're going to be there on time. You've literally never once been late. For arriving for a client. You will be there on time, the door will open, everything will be okay. Like, I catch myself, I stop. And I'm not willing to have stress. I'm not willing to be stressed. It's like, unless there's something that, that's relevant for stress. But there's no lions chasing me right now. You know, am I going to open the door in time and get the hot water bottle ready for my client? Yes, it'll all be wonderful. The music will be on.
I think that's brilliant, because what you're reinventing, well, you've done that. I don't know whether you said you've got a way, you've reinvented how you are living, and you've, to sort of be able to, whatever you do, even if you just stay in the same job, if you can reinvent that, I'm not going to be stressed, I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to be true to myself. You don't actually have to physically make a change or leave a job or a partner or whatever, but they're the key things that happen as a result of making the change, from what I'm hearing from our panel.
Yes, and then just to say that on the woman that designed the clothes, she had a little meeting with us one day and went, do you know what, I'm not going to design autumn winter 24. And it was just like, and I hadn't mentioned the business yet, because I was like, I don't know how it's all going to work. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just trusting it's all going to work out. I worked from home anyway and stuff. And it was just like it all just finished seamless, I
love that.
So
Isn't that brilliant?
and that's when you know you're doing the right thing as well. I think, like everything, even finding the venue, the week I was going to get the deposit, we had to pay the deposit for the machines that we were buying. We had them, we were just organising the money. But that week, money dropped into our bank account that we've been trying to get from a company for 5 years. Wow. And it was the same amount of money as the deposit.
I'm going to just publicly manifest money dropping into my bank account.
It was our money, but it was definitely not meant to, we'd given up on it. It's like, it's not coming.
No, it does happen. I totally
and it's like
agree.
when you really trust and you come from the right place and it's the right, and I can have thoughts like, oh, what's the bookings like this week? And I'm just not like, I've got to trust. Am I doing the right actions? Am I taking the right steps? Have I just forgotten to post anything on social media this week? Or, it's like, if I've done all of that, I've just got, there's nothing to be, worry will make zero difference.
Yeah. That's such a good piece of advice. And I think, to make reinvention happen, I am conscious, I've actually clocked the time, 7:52. I think there's one more question, actually, and then I really want to open it up to the floor. So, or is there another question? Would you, Cameron? Okay, and actually this is one that we can all think about. I have asked the panel and they have thought about their answers. So this is like, what does it mean to live to reinvent? So living in that mindset and that attitude, and your definition of long-term health and change. But really it's more about, what's the attitude? I think we know, but I know you guys have thought about it, so...
I'll just give a quick reply. Given them for me, it was like, I'm now in my mid-50s or early 50s, and just like, I'm not willing to live my life at this pace, at this stress any longer. I want to be able to stop and smell the roses and enjoy life. As you say, you've no idea how long you've got. And the one thing that was missing, and it kind of is my exercise. So I can do the calm, I can do the stress-free, I can go for... So that's why I went... Fiona's coaching me on my fitness. It's like, get out, have a walk, go to your yoga class, and I'm doing it. I'm, lose some weight. So that was the one thing. And that I knew that, getting stress out of my life was really important, managing my health, and, seeing people, the health benefits of people coming into my room and the health benefits of that, the amazing... people with serious illnesses really seeing improvement. But also for myself, knowing that, you've got to eat well, you've got to exercise, you've got to, do all those things and not overeat. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it's living to reinvent is very much about a kind of attitude change and a kind of approach to life. And before I reinvented, I'd been in teaching a really long time. I'm not a serial reinventor. Like my brother and my sister, they've both been like married and divorced like multiple times, like 3, 4 times, and I've been married for 28 years. I stick with things. But what has changed to me is to kind of separate sticking with something that's worthwhile from feeling trapped in something. And that's something I'm not kind of prepared to kind of have anymore. And I was reflecting that actually maybe if I'd been able to kind of work on that kind of trappedness and feeling indispensable in the wrong places in my life, maybe I wouldn't have actually had to make such a big crazy reinvention as I did. Maybe I still would have done that. But I hear a lot of people saying, well, but what about this? What about that? I have to do this. I'm on this kind of treadmill. And sometimes they're webs that we have woven ourselves, and we need to kind of untangle them to be free. And maybe we need some help to do that. We need like a coach or a trusted friend or a sister or, somebody. But yeah, sometimes those webs we have woven ourselves, and I think we deserve to kind of untangle and then be more intentional about the things that we put into place.
Yeah, I love that. Webs we've woven ourselves, and I think it comes back to that change comes from within. Whatever you're doing on the outside, if you don't change anything inside, you can build an empire and it will collapse if you're collapsing inside. Helen?
Yeah, I'm aware that, reinventing 5 times is kind of just looking more like I'm non-committal rather than like a really strong reinventor. And this, I did have that thought myself in my 5th and hopefully final career reinvention. After I scaled down the business and was going through a phase of, was that the right thing? Like, oh my God, what have I just done? I've just made 5 people redundant and I'm going into this new career that I essentially, have just decided that I'm qualified to do. And so I did this little exercise and that I made up, and I encourage anyone to do it. And this is what I think, what is live to reinvent. I wrote down what the pillars in my life, the things that are most important to me. So that the obvious ones, like health, family, money, all the stuff that, we think of. But I put some specific ones to me, and everyone will be different. And I came up with these 10 pillars, so to speak. And then I put them in, and just to give you an idea, one of them was just joy. That is just something that is important. One was friends, one was, fitness. To give you an idea, I won't tell you what order I put them in, but when I came to put them in order, money was 10th, that was last, which is probably why I chose journalism in the first place. But that shows a lot, and this exercise was really useful because that enabled me to put into perspective what is important in my life. And then within those categories, I put another column on the page, and I wrote in there what is important. What is it about those 10 things that is important? So, for instance, in the friends pillar, what is it about friends? What exactly? And I tried to pinpoint just what exactly these things are. And it was a really, really useful exercise. And I continually revisit it, maybe once a year. And that informs any reinvention, because those pillars have remained the same, but I've put them in different. I've reordered them a little bit over the years, and I think if you can do that, and the little reasons why those pillars are important are going to change. But if you live by that and you're always aware of what those things are that are important to you, then you are going to be living your true life and what you
and
want
then
to be.
What you're doing, I guess, is if you're off-piste and you're not adhering to your 10 pillars, then you reinvent yourself so you're back on them. And that's, the driver for reinvention, for change, for transformation comes from those things. It's Helen's 10 commandments by the sounds of things. And I love it. It's a great exercise. Another book for Helen. Well, actually, you have got the book coming out, haven't you? Well, the cold
I have.
therapy book, which we haven't mentioned, but we should really, because that in itself is a reinvention of how we do health, fitness, wellness, isn't it? And you could briefly tell us that, and then we'll open to the floor. But I think it'd be interesting for people to hear about it.
Yeah, well, it's still I'm still writing it, so it's very far from coming out. But my latest research project, while still being a writing coach, this is not another reinvention, honest. But I'm writing my own book as well as coaching and mentoring people to write their books, and it's about temperature exposure, because that's one of the health protocols that I'm very interested in, making the argument that we don't expose ourselves enough to temperature change, and it really does help our health. So that's an area of research that I'm delving into in the moment.
So I think that's brilliant. Well, I think the panel have been amazing tonight, and we've had some really fantastic stories, and I hope inspiration. And so I think first of all, it's open to the floor. Questions, or anyone want to share a story of their own change that they might be either have gone through or going through. I have the mic. I can walk over and hand it to you. Does anyone want to share anything or ask anything of the panel? Yeah. I'll give you the microphone.
Stories. And what struck me is with AI coming out and affecting the world in not so in the process side of it, brilliant, but not in the effect of humanity and etc. Is it all the roles that you're doing in your business? It's dealing with people, with humans. It's not AI. It can't replace that. Helen, with yours, with writing, how does that? Obviously, it's people's stories, right? It's their own stories. It's AI. But have you seen anything when you're checking people's books and their stories, etc.? Have you seen AI come in or creep in?
Hugely.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's a real problem. And in fact, this was one of the when I was making this transition from the PR agency to this, a few people were saying to me, Helen, you are going the wrong direction. AI, you're launching yourself as a writing mentor right when the world is launched AI, which is essentially, which is language models. And I knew that, and I'm aware of that, and it's still a concern. And yes, I've had clients who clearly they get AI to write a first draft. I had one client, I was sort of part ghostwriting, part structurally editing his drafts, and it was so clear he'd got AI to do it. I was trying to de-AI, because it's so obvious, I'm sure we've all read, we all know the patterns now of AI. I mean, it's really, really obvious and quite grating sometimes. And I was trying to tell him this, and then after a while he said, actually, thanks very much for your services, but I'm going to get AI to do the rest. So I was really quite wedded to that project. I got really quite into it. So that's just one example. But yeah, just seeing AI in drafts, it's a massive disruption to the industry. I went to the book fair recently, the London Book Fair, which is an publishing industry conference, and there was lots of talks on this. And one I heard in the talks, one publisher had dropped an author's book because the author disclosed that they'd put it through ChatGPT or one of those models to check for typos and to fact check it. And the publisher was like, well, if it's been through ChatGPT, it's out there in the ether now. So they cancelled the publishing contract. So, you've got to be really, really careful what you put in there. And certainly from the publishing industry doesn't want writers to use AI. Good. But for research, yes. Yeah. Summarising, absolutely. But for writing, no.
Like that.
Another mic. I'm not very good at this mic.
Pleased about that because my daughter's doing creative writing.
A wonderful set of inspirational stories, thank you. I wondered what advice you could give about the sort of nostalgia of change and perhaps the sadness that there might be about leaving something behind and going forward.
Yeah, I said I still cry about not being in my job. And sometimes I meet children that I taught, and I often meet families and parents through my other jobs now. And sometimes they say, we really miss you at school, you know, and I do miss it. And I think there was definitely a grieving process. And it started when I did have my notice in. I remember I handed my notice in the morning, and then I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell anybody at school for about a month. And I would get into my car every night or on my bike, and I'd just cry all the way home. And it was bigger than just have I done the right thing. There was a kind of grieving of who I was. And it's interesting, we've all talked about our reinventions in terms of what we do as our career and our profession. And so much in modern life, our identity is tied to that. So to change it does involve a grieving process of who you were. And I had a very, I'm not like a big public thing like you being on TV or anything, but I was like, everybody in Five Ways knew who I was if they had kids under 7, because they came to my school. And then I went to literally to cleaning toilets and scrubbing floors. And a lot of people thought that loss of status would upset me and that would be really difficult. To be honest, that never did. But the idea that I wasn't a teacher anymore was really hard. And like I said, I come from a big family of teachers. So my sister is a head teacher still. And my mother was a head teacher, my mum who died at my age, probably from the stress of the job. My stepmum, my mother-in-law, everybody, we are all teachers. My husband was a university professor. So to not have that has been really difficult. I think in my reinvention, I have preserved the teacher part of my role, though. You know, I still teach children to swim, and I still teach and coach adults, and I teach adults to be lifeguards. So I think the kernel of it, the pillar of it that was really important to me is still there. But I had a lot of grief, loads and loads of grief.
I was just going to quickly add to that I think a lot of people who are parents, and when their children leave home, and the emptiness, I don't know if anyone is in that position, but for me I was, and it's kind of like you're a parent, you're going from one stage to the next stage, then all of a sudden you're always a parent, but you do have to have a bit of a reinvention as they've gone, they're sorted, and that bit's done. So I think a lot of people experience a grieving process there, and other changes that happen to you that you didn't necessarily choose. So reinvention can happen just because life changes. So it's kind of, the more reliant you are on yourself, be able to create the life you want, to be in the moment, to trust the process, the better, I think. Does anyone else have a comment, question? The microphone is there. There's a couple at the front there. Can you pass the mic?
Very impressive stories, and I think really interesting to hear. I'm also interested to know around you at the times when you're reinventing, the impact that has on your nearest and dearest, and how do you balance voices of concern or support, or measured against your own internal, was it all positive, or how did you drown out the negative? Because there would have been some negative voices. So I'm
just going to, before I pass it on, I think Helen, you touched on that when you were saying about you have to just, you do look back. And also I think a really big part is community and support. And in our group we have that. But Fiona, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I mean, I don't think it helps if you can't actually explain what it is you're about to do. You're like, well, it's this thing, Dad, that, it's energy. And he's like, what? So yes, it's being able to speak, what I would say, into the listening of others. So be able to put the people in your life at ease and really have a backup plan. So I think there was a few eyebrows raised by what was I doing. But I guess the fact that I have a husband who does, who is working and has a job, and there is a regular income coming in there before we set it up, was, I think it really was like, oh, what's Fiona doing now? But life's too short. I think that's my, it was just like, I'll give them not the story that they want to hear, but I'll tailor it to sound good. and they're all impressed. They're all really happy for me. So but it is a difficult one when you're doing something completely random. Yeah.
I just want to add, like, yes, at the time, there's a lot of kind of like, what is she doing? Like she's really just leaving that job. And I found a few kind of awkward kind of dinner parties with my husband when they were like, she's going to be a lifeguard? What's she doing? But it very, very quickly, my children and my husband, but most like my children, who was really like one of the reasons I did it, they were like, Mum, you are different and you are happy and we are happier. And my relationships with them became of such a better quality that there was really like a no-brainer, and all the criticism stopped.
Yeah, it's a great question. I really admire you having a family and doing what you did, because I don't have children, so it is easier for me, I suppose, to make radical decisions. I've got a very supportive partner who I was with when I made the decision to scale the business down, who's both been supportive of the change, but then also skeptical. He was one of the ones who was saying, why are you going into writing and when AI is taking over the world, So I had resistance from him, but also huge support. And also from family, yeah. I think it's difficult for them, because the thing that precedes the need to change is usually that you're stressed, right? I think all of us have established that something wasn't right, and that's so your family lived through that, so or friends, so they probably understand there is a need for change. But then comes the difficult phase of when you're in the process of reinventing, you've got to put your all into whatever it is new that you're reinventing. So therefore, you're not going to have time for those loved ones. So that's two difficult phases. It's only when you come out the other side and you've gone through, the catalyst becomes the butterfly, then I think the people around you can see reap the benefits. But it is difficult for those around you.
Thank you, Helen. I think, I'm conscious it is 8:10. Trudy. It is Trudy. One more question, and then I think we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Amazing stories. I think I'm interested in a bit of advice, really, because I feel like I'm in the middle of a reinvention. And given the cost of living crisis and everything that's happening, I do feel I keep getting pulled back to my old life. And how do I stay on that path of reinvention? I know you mentioned a few things, Helen, already, but is there anything else you can share that will help me stay in that reinvention path?
That's a really good question. I need to think about it. I'm going to pass it over to Fiona.
Yeah. There is, I guess, it's making sure you've got the foundations in place. Like, I literally did do the sums. It's like, okay, if literally nobody comes in my business for 2 years, not one customer, how much will it cost me? And am I willing to risk that cost? So I didn't throw everything over the wall and then just go, oh, well, I've got rent to pay, I've got insurance to pay, I've got all of this. So it's having a foundation and then standing for what it is you're going for. And maybe there's times where you think, well, I'm, like you said, you had to do a 1 day a week job doing something you weren't sure of doing, it might not look exactly how you think it's going to look, and that's the other thing sometimes you have to let go of.
Yeah, I can chip in here as well, as the co-founder of Live to Reinvent. One of the things I did was Claire's very good at managing the books, a bit better than me, and so actually practical things like that, and it isn't easy at all. I'm Airbnb-ing my flat, I do lots of different things and think creatively, but as I think Fiona said, when you're on the right path, it's amazing how things do, you can't be reckless, but you can trust the process and just stick with it, it will work out, and be practical at the same time, and just get through the fearful moments, I think. But because, the money issue is always going to be there, like you said, cost of living crisis, and you can have that kind of fear and worry when you're in a high-paying job and you're buying, spending more money a lot of the time and when you've got more money coming in. So I think it's about just trusting and sticking with it and having practical things in place.
Yep.
So thank you very much. I think that is everything. We've covered a lot of issues and stories. So just give the panel a round of applause and thank you very much, everyone. And I'd just like wrap it up with a quick thing. I think that's on there. So we've got, if you want to scan our QR code, there's our socials. We'd love you to follow us on our Instagram because we're working hard at building a profile. It's, like everything, we said these changes don't happen overnight, and it is a constant, working at it. So follow us and we'll share the conversation far and wide, and get in touch if you've got stories. If you know anyone who'd like to be on the podcast, anyone who's done an amazing reinvention, get in touch. I'd love to talk to you. And I think that's everything. Have I forgotten anything, Claire? No. Look, we've got a few more minutes. We can have a drink and wind it down and catch up with each other. But thank you very much, then, for letting us go a little bit over.